We have 3 amazing speakers for you to hear tonight, so get comfortable and get excited. My name is Emily Martin. I'm going to be your Master of Ceremony for tonight. Before we begin, I'd like to please ask everybody to silence their cell phones, put them on airplane mode, or turn them off, so as not to disturb the speakers during their speeches with ringtones, etc. Now I'd like to turn the mic over to our wonderful teacher, Mr. Dylan Odner. Thank you, Mr. Odner. Now I'd like to welcome our first speaker. He is homegrown right here in Bernathen, Pennsylvania. Here to talk about creating his landscape business is Benjamin Granch.
Creating a landscape business is the title of my speech. But if you've known me since I was a little kid, it's more like growing a landscape business. A client of mine said to my mom, "We've always known what Benjamin was going to do since he was 2 years old." She was referring to my love of landscaping. I've always loved landscaping, ever since I was able to go out and work with my dad. When I was 2 years old, or when I was still in a car seat, I would go out with him in the mornings, hoping his backhoe or some other big piece of machinery was on the job site. By the end of the morning, my mom would have to pick me up because I was so tired from digging beside my dad for hours. I would leave the job site with heavy eyes, but with a big smile on my face, knowing I had fun all morning. My first wheelbarrow came from bats, and every other year after that, I would get a new wheelbarrow in a slightly bigger size. I've been around landscaping all my life. That's why I like it so much. But that's the only thing I was really exposed to. The bookkeeping and connecting with clients was something I didn't have a lot of experience in. Well, I debated doing something related to the fire company, another one of my burning interests. I decided to make my senior project about learning the business part of a landscape company and not so much the hands-on. I already had about a dozen lawns, a mower, and a truck. The goal of my senior project was to grow my own business to include more than just mowing. My 9-page research paper that I wrote over the fall was directly related to my actual project. I researched how to run an effective business in line with spiritual and moral values of the new church. I always had the love part, but the wisdom or truth part was what my senior project was about for me. In senior project, getting a mentor is highly encouraged by the teachers, and looking back on it, I'm really glad I got one. So the first person that came to mind naturally was my dad, but that wouldn't really be expanding my horizons, meeting new people, or getting different perspectives. I began creating a mental list of people who lived in the area that would be a good mentor for growing a landscape business. Providentially, around this time, I was volunteering for a local community service organization who helps families in need called Pay It Forward. I was doing some yard work, and Rich Shao was also there helping out. I knew Rich did a lot of landscaping in Bernathen, but that was about it. I thought about the idea for a couple weeks, and he eventually said yes. Rich and I met weekly for 7 weeks up at the dorm. We would go over advertising, pricing, and he would look at writing I had done and give me comments. I'm really happy that Rich and I were able to form a good working relationship through this process. I had many challenges throughout my senior project. One major challenge in the beginning was coming up with a name for my business. My family and friends sat down with me to brainstorm ideas for a name, and after a while, Cranch 2.0 was born with a tagline of, "For the Lawn Haul." Another roadblock was figuring out an hourly rate to charge clients. I had to consider insurance, cost of materials, equipment repairs, and new purchases, and gasoline. It was really challenging to figure out a number that enables me to cover my costs and make money while not overcharging the customer and losing work. Another challenge I encountered during my project was balancing my work for clients and my schoolwork. When I started advertising, I got about a dozen calls from people to do work. With work, mowing 20 lawns, school, homework, and being a very active member on the Bernathen Fire Company, this spring has been a very stressful time for me. This was kind of expected due to the fact that a landscaper's busiest season is in the spring, when customers want a spring cleanup, beds mulched, and the lawns need to be mowed every 5 days. However, this spring has been especially hard because it came so late. There was no lead up to spring. But probably the biggest challenge of my project was pricing, estimates, and invoices. I became familiar with QuickBooks so I could format invoices, but the most difficult part for me was estimating how much time and materials a job would take. It is not an exact science, but I've underbid several jobs, but that is part of the learning. This was evident when I did some work for Corey Boyce. I filled in ruts along his driveway, picked up sticks, and weeded his beds. I underbid how much time the job would take, and the amount of topsoil that I originally estimated was half as much as I needed. But this is all part of the learning curve. In senior project, the teachers constantly pushed me to go beyond my comfort zone and do some self-growth. One big way this showed up in my project was having to meet with clients and go over potential jobs and ask any questions they might have about landscaping. I've been doing this a lot lately, and I'm getting better at it. Instead of nervousness, I'm feeling excited and happy to go meet with a new client that I can help by mowing their lawn, cleaning up a pile of brush in their driveway, or giving their beds a fresh coating of mulch. Another area that needed some self-growth was my bookkeeping skills. Before senior project, I had a notepad, but mostly just used my head to keep track of the people that owed me for mowing. I've now started to use QuickBooks to keep track of my work and finances, but this is still a work in progress. An eye-opening experience I had during my project was meeting with Cranch Landscapers' insurance agent to see how much my individual policy would cost. I was really glad I got to go through this process with the agent, and there were even a couple of things we added to the policy that I didn't think of, but the agent did. A major piece at the end of my project was the service component. Because of my previous participation with the Pay It Forward group, I thought it would be a great idea to lead a work crew. I contacted Nina DeWeese, who runs the organization, to ask if I could be involved in some behind-the-scenes work and to also lead a crew during a workday. As an already active participant with the Pay It Forward, Mrs. DeWeese had no problems with me helping out. I attended 2 planning meetings and met with the homeowner to go over specific landscaping needs. On the day that I did my service piece, I gathered lots of hand tools, and eight people, including myself, went to the yard and worked for about 2 hours, cleaning up leaves, picking up branches, cutting out invasive vines, and pruning several bushes back. I really enjoyed working alongside the people that showed up to help, and I'm extremely grateful for Pay It Forward and Mrs. DeWeese for allowing me to organize this workday. For me, working on Pay It Forward is the ultimate goal. It allows me to use my love of landscaping and to help other people. I want to pursue more education in landscaping, but I did not get accepted to the trade school I applied to. Instead, I spent about $8,000 on a new mower, a new trailer, and a four-wheel drive truck for the winter. I will intend to keep going with Cranch 2.0 till I find another school for landscaping. Overall, I've really enjoyed Senior Project, but also got pushed to learn some new skills to be better at what I love. I'm also extremely grateful for my fellow classmates who took the journey with me through Senior Project. I've really enjoyed helping other Senior Project goers and seeing what brilliant projects they have created. I like Senior Project, but I cannot wait till this class and the school year is over in just a couple of weeks. As I said before, it has been a really stressful time this spring with work and school. So when school gets out, I will hit the ground running with mowing, mulching, brush clearing, and slowly taking over my dad's client base so there will be less competition in town. If you're interested in hiring Cranch 2.0 for any landscaping, please ask me for a business card. This is hopefully just the beginning of a long landscaping career for me, and I'm glad I got to grow it here in Senior Project. Thank you. Well, that means I covered one.
Discipline. Did you come up with for the long haul yourself?
Kind of. I mean, it's kind of a collaborative effort with family and friends, but yeah. Yes. The question was, when can I expect some payment on the materials that I've used, and when I have enough money to pay for them. Any other questions?
What would you say was the actual biggest challenge you ran into? And how did you get through that?
The question was, what was my biggest challenge? Probably after dealing with like my family members. I mean, if I'm being completely honest, there was, I wouldn't say like disagreements, but like a lot of discussion that went on. That was probably the most challenging part, is dealing with my family members. Anyone else?
I think I could learn a thing or two from him. Now we are going to go into a brief intermission. You are all welcome to come and look at the portfolios up front and get one of Ben's business cards. And also help yourselves to refreshments on the hallway behind the auditorium, right through those doors. We'd also like to please ask you not to bring the refreshments back into the auditorium because there's no food allowed in here. Thank you. Wonderful intermission. If everyone could please take their seats for our next speaker. I'll give everyone a moment to kind of settle down. Now, I'd like everyone to focus their attention on our next speaker. Here to talk about developing his photography business is Cole Lambertus.
They're supposed to, oh, we're good. Okay. All right. What makes a good photograph? It's a good question. Think about that for a second. I'll hit the button.
Let me see. That's great.
It's all right. I can just tap it.
Low on batteries. I'll get it fixed. Just 1 second. There.
All right.
Believe it or not, this isn't his fault.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Yeah. So you're all thinking about that question. It's in your head. Gears are turning.
It wouldn't be a good night if something didn't go wrong, right?
Yeah. Knock, knock. Didn't get that far yet. The back of it's out. Oh.
Really
Is there
interested in what's going
supposed to
on
be
here?
a top here? There's nothing.
No,
in
that's
there.
the.
Oh.
That's we're gonna.
Yeah. Oh.
It won't be as pretty. Best we can do under short notice. I'll fiddle with this.
All right. All right. So to reiterate, what makes a good photograph? Do I just click the button here? Click.
Oh, you know what's going on?
Ah!
Yeah.
Nobody look. Don't look. It's a. Oh. Yeah.
Without further ado, here is.
All right. All right. What makes a good photograph? Here's a picture of a girl eating a cupcake. She's got some flowers in her face. She's looking off to the left a little bit. But here's the same girl. A second later. It's the same cupcake, the same flowers, the same dress, the same expression, same everything. Which picture do you like better? Raise your hand if you prefer A. Now B. Most people prefer picture B. But why is that? The two photos are almost identical. It's because of the different lighting and composition. This is what I love about photography. I love how much the small aspects such as posing, lighting, or even the direction of a person's eyes can affect a picture. This is why I decided to make a photography business for my senior project. I've always been interested in photography. It wasn't until a senior project that I was able to pursue this interest. I was very lucky to get mentors for each section of the year that are very knowledgeable in their fields. Bruce Crunland was my first mentor for the senior project paper. Not only was he a very thorough and attentive mentor, he also lent me my first camera to practice with. This was the first time I was able to experiment using a digital single-lens reflex camera, or DSLR. I later bought my own DSLR, but I remember taking Mr. Crunlin's camera out the first day he lent it to me and taking pictures in places with lots of light, very little light, and I was mostly taking close-up abstract pictures such as these two photos of my fire pit. I had some knowledge of the rule of thirds, so I was trying to incorporate that into as many pictures as possible, but that was the extent of my photography skills. My research paper helped to greatly expand my understanding of the subject, as the topic of my paper was what makes a photo interesting. Some of the rules I learned were leading lines, framing, and how to have fun with lighting. At this point, I still didn't know what I wanted my niche to be for the photography business. That was until I was watching a video on lighting. I borrowed my brother and had him pose for me as I took the picture that would make me want to focus on portraiture. I loved having control over the lights and being able to create a story within my picture. Shortly after deciding to do portraiture, I had a video call with wedding photographer Amy Brickman to discuss portrait photography and business. She gave me lots of advice as well as a few names for possible mentors. As time was moving on, I still hadn't found a mentor for the project portion of the year. The dream mentor would be somebody who had their own successful photography business. And finally, I had to give up the idea of having a local mentor, and I asked Amy for the contact information of her friend, Paul Gargaliano from California, who she mentioned may make a good mentor. Paul is a professional wedding photographer and owns a successful business called Hazel Photo. I contacted Paul after looking at his beautiful portfolio filled with lots of different, creative, and emotional pictures. We had our first meeting, and he gave me a lot of information about running a business, how to email correctly, and on being a nice, likable person in general. At the end of the meeting, he said, "So are we doing this thing or what?" And I had my mentor. Over the next few months, Paul had oodles of information for me. We started off each meeting talking about the business end of my project. We would discuss my website, networking strategies, or just equipment I needed. After that, we would move to the pictures I had taken that week. Paul very nicely went through each photograph and critiqued them as I soaked up the information like a sponge, thinking about how I will be able to incorporate those things into my next photo shoot. I believe that the majority of my success in this project was finding the correct mentor who was able to understand both aspects of my project, the business side and the photography side. So, why make a photography business? Why not just take the easier route of making a hobby out of photography? I had always viewed Senior Project as an opportunity for me to try out possible career options. I had the mindset of starting a business from the very beginning. But there's more to it. I wanted people to see my photos, and excuse me. I wanted to make other people happy receiving pictures of themselves. It's like watching somebody react to a good magic trick. When you show them a good picture you've taken, the amazement on their faces never grows old. And I've been taught that if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. I don't feel like I'm working when I take photos. So what could be a more perfect career, if that's what I love to do? Excuse me. Paul had me make a website for my business and work many hours perfecting it. We talked about pricing and building a portfolio. We talked a lot about advertising and how to get the word of my business to reach as many ears as possible. We had a lot of networking strategies to continue getting clients, and Paul had me sign up for PickTime, which is a website where I can create a portfolio and send it to my client. From there, they can download download prints or buy pictures, or download pictures and buy prints. Paul believes that a good business is grounded on efficiency and organization. At the first meeting alone, I filled up almost 3 pages of notes on organization. Paul also had me download Evernote so I could organize my notes on organization. Throughout my project, I got to connect with a lot of people through my photo shoots. I was very excited when my old guitar teacher, Ryan Cook, messaged me for a photo shoot. This shoot was nearly canceled due to rain, but luckily it held off long enough for me to get some cool pictures. And then, when the rain started to pick up, we found a cool barn and even incorporated the rain into some of those pictures. Another fun experience was taking pictures for Rain to Sinnesfet in the Bernathen thrift shop. I got permission to use the place after hours, so we had free reign of the store. We experimented using tea lights and making pictures through glass plates. It was a very fun photo shoot, and I think the pictures turned out great. Another amazing experience I had was doing a free mini portrait session after Easter church for those who wanted a family photo. Zach Lambertus and Nora Connolly very kindly assisted me in this project. I set up a stand for people to line up at while I took pictures, and my lovely assistants helped me make sure that my emails were written down and conversation was being made. This was my first experience with setting up an event like this, and I didn't realize how much went into it. The service piece of my project was another aspect of photography I hadn't tried before. I did the headshots for the cast and crew of A&C's Shrek the Musical. Here's a quick glance at the pictures I took. I had a lot of fun doing this job, but it was also very stressful. I had 30 minutes to take over 50 headshots, but we got through everyone, and after editing and re-editing, my final product was well received by the director. After high school, I plan on continuing this business I've created. Paul said that he would love to keep meeting with me to talk about my photo shoots and give me advice while I continue to take steps to improve my business. Senior project was an opportunity for me to experiment with other career options. I wanted to take full advantage of the situation I was in. My project has allowed me to chase a dream that's been a passion of mine for many years. I plan to continue following that dream because if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. Thank you. Any questions? Yeah, at the back, one of you. Yeah, so the question is, can I briefly explain the rule of thirds? So in the picture you saw, there was a girl, Nora, walking down the path, and the second thing I clicked, a grid appeared, and it created some intersections. And what happens is, where Nora was standing, she's the subject of the picture, and she was right in the intersection of one of those lines. And the rule of thirds means that you should have your subject be in one of those intersections for the best possible picture. Yes, Libby. Oh man. So how many total photo shoots did I do? I think around 10 maybe, but I have more lined up. Yes, you. So yeah, I have more lined up and I plan to continue through the summer. Yes.
When are you going to spend more money on a better camera?
When I have more money. That's when I'm going to spend more money on a better camera. All right. Cool.
Thank you, Cole. That speech was so good. My life practically flashed before my eyes. We're going to have another brief intermission. So again, you can enjoy the refreshments in the back and help yourselves to looking at the portfolios and the business cards up front. Hello again. I hope everybody had a really nice intermission once again. So our last speaker's speech is really up to par, if I do say so myself. Here to talk about his golf outing is Connor McGrath, so let's just swing right into it.
Ever since I was young, sports ruled my life. I played every sport possible in every season I could. It wasn't until I was 13 when I decided golf was my favorite sport and that's what I wanted to compete in the most. I spent countless hours practicing and learned to push myself and compete at a high level. I thought I understood what it was like to put in loads of time and effort into something. At least that's what I thought. Until I signed up for senior project. So now let's fast forward. I'm in senior project with Mr. Odner and attempting to write a massive research paper. I decided to write about my passion of golf. I researched why Tiger Woods was so dominant and the keys to his success. Learning from him, I hope to incorporate some of these keys into my own game and life. So like everything, the paper came and went, and now it was time to figure out the question. And I'm sure every senior project student knows the question. The question of, so what is your senior project going to be? I continued to answer the exact same way for weeks. I have no idea. Through the long days of thinking and trying to find something that would drive me and push me proved difficult. So I worked with Mr. Boyce and decided to work with my passion, golf. But what would I do with golf? Who would be a good mentor? Most importantly, what was my why and purpose? What could I do to make the biggest impact? After spending hours of thinking and procrastinating, I figured it out. I decided I wanted to host a golf outing and raise money for a great cause. Immediately, one foundation stood above all. Make-A-Wish. Make-A-Wish Foundation is a wonderful cause and gives the opportunity to grant the wish of a critically ill child. It is incredible that 100% of the money that goes to Make-A-Wish is given right back to granting wishes. I've witnessed the good Make-A-Wish does and the hope and joy it brings to families with critically ill kids. Being able to help and bring a little light into such dark and hard times for these kids and families form the basis around my why. I set a goal of raising $10,000, which is the average cost of a wish. To put together an outing with such little time would already be a stretch, and now trying to raise $10,000 was going to be even harder to accomplish. But at least I finally had my project. Now I just needed a mentor. I was lucky enough to work with Tom McGrath, my father. He has had experience in this field as he was on the golf outing committee for St. Mary's Hospital. I knew he would be the most effective mentor because I could always rely on him, being there when I had questions, and he always had my back. Those were some of the easy to see upsides. There were other upsides that at the time seemed like downsides. He was constantly pushing me and hard on me to keep going, and at certain points it was a lot to handle and seemed like he was being way too hard on me. But I knew all he wanted was for me to succeed, and I was blessed to have been able to work with him. Without his help and pushing me through the process, my project would not have been a success. Now that I had a mentor, it was time to get to work. I reached out to Huntington Valley Country Club, a place where I've been blessed to grow up and discover my love for the game of golf. I worked with head golf professional Ian Dazell and put together the blueprint of the outing. Once we set the date and format in place, it was time to network. I reached out to many different companies, friends, and also strangers, trying to fill up the outing with players and sponsors. Immediately, I began receiving responses, both good and bad. A few of the first were Jim Cramer with Mad Money, Jim Dever with Bank of America, and our very own Super Bowl champions, the Philadelphia Eagles. Many more responded, and before I knew it, I had many sponsors and players. Throughout the weeks, the spots filled up, and the sponsors kept rolling in. I made weekly trips to the post office to pick up checks from these generous people, and it all started coming together. I went to the bank to deposit all the checks and put them into account strictly for all the money raised for Make-A-Wish. The only thing I needed to be careful of was to make sure I didn't deposit the money into my dad's bank account, which had a similar account name. That would have been a little bit of a problem if I sent my mentor to jail for embezzlement. Needless to say, I probably wouldn't have gotten a good mentor review. Luckily, I didn't. Then my project took an unexpected but positive twist. My mom met a man who drove her to the airport because my parents were going to spend a few days in Florida to take a break from our 5 little demons. I don't blame them. They were talking and my project came up. And Mr. Hendler is on a weekly sports talk show on Blog Talk Radio called Fightin' Words. He wanted me to come on and promote my outing. I was excited, but also nervous, because I had never done anything like this before. I was getting ready to go on when I felt the need to ask my mom if they had a lot of listeners. She replied, "Oh, not too many, honey. Only like 300,000. Shouldn't have asked. I thought I was nervous before. Oh my goodness. But I went on and continued to for a few weeks back to back. And I'm glad I did. I met a bunch of amazing people and received some jaw-dropping responses. Because of Mr. Hendler and Fightin' Words, the Tampa Bay Lightning and the Philadelphia Phillies wanted to support my project. I was beyond stoked, and this led me to talking to my brothers and screaming, "I'm speechless," when the mic was on and the whole radio could hear me. Yep. This was an incredible experience, and I was very grateful for all of Mr. Hendler's support and help with my project. Through the rest of the weeks, I continued to finalize the outing plans and the players, and then the day of the outing arrived. This was the toughest obstacle to overcome because the weather was not ideal, to say the least. It was 40 degrees and pouring rain. The course was underwater, and I was beyond stressed. I frantically talked with my parents and talked with Mr. Dazell, trying to figure out what we needed to do. We ended up having to postpone the golf outing. This was devastating. All the anticipation and excitement rapidly disappeared. At the time, it seemed like it just wasn't supposed to be. Then, Mr. Dazell reached out and found another day they could fit the outing in. Mr. Dazell played a major role in helping my project become a success, and I look forward to hopefully working with him again. Now that we had the new date, I reorganized the outing participants and put the final touches in place. And before I knew it, Thursday, May 3rd came around. And the weather was just a touch different. It could not have been a better golf day. Sunny and 90 degrees is pretty hard to beat. I was so excited to finally execute the event I had been planning for months. As people were arriving, so did my volunteers. Sue McGrath, my mom, my brother Liam, and my Aunt Julie Carr took on the task of running registration, which was hectic, to say the least. Excuse me. I also was lucky to have two of my close friends help me out, Drake Willie and Cole Lambertus. Together, we ran the putting contest, and Cole also took photos of my event. Later in the day, Laurel Mergen and Dave Klosterman showed up to give some support. I had so much fun getting experience this with some of my closest friends. It made a terrific day even better. After the golf was over and everyone was mingling and enjoying the beautiful evening on the terrace, it was time for me to deliver the awards and give a brief speech, which I probably should have put together before I picked up the microphone. I was standing with Lori Beth Miley. She works with Make-A-Wish Foundation and helped organize all the planning and details with donating to Make-A-Wish Foundation. The awards were given out, and I managed to get through my speech with only a few hundred filler words. I presented Lori Beth Miley with the check of the amount raised, and I am proud to announce that together we raised $28,111.08. I was beyond stoked to have been able to grant over 2 wishes. As the night ended and everyone cleared out, I had a little time to myself to reflect over the course of the year and this project. I thought about all the hardships and stressful times, as well as the life lessons I learned, like how to network, how to act in a professional environment, and how to manage my time effectively. This was an incredible experience, and I've been so blessed to have been able to spend so many hours into making a difference and for these kids and do what I can to make their wishes come true because they 100% deserve it. This has been such a wild ride, and it has been a blast. I would just like to thank a few people. I'd like to thank God for giving me the opportunity to help serve others and blessing me with such amazing people in my life. My dad for being an incredible mentor and helping me through all the good times and the bad. My mom for endless love and support of me through everything I've done. All my volunteers and the staff at Huntington Valley for helping me run such an amazing event. All the players and sponsors of my event, I could not have done this without all of you. Lori Beth Miley and Make-A-Wish for working with me to grant wishes to such deserving kids. Mr. Odner for being such a fun teacher and making the first half of the year so memorable and enjoyable for all of his support. I could not have gotten through the year without you. And to Mr. Boyce. Mr. Boyce has taught me how to take on the challenges of not only school, but also life. And for being one of the most incredible role models I've ever met. None of this would have been possible without him in my corner. Thank you, Mr. Boyce. And thank you all for coming out and supporting me and all my classmates and their phenomenal senior projects. Good night and God bless. Are there any questions? Libby? I actually didn't play. I was frantically running around working. Yeah. Even though I'm still a kid, I sometimes have to work. Deck?
Did Drake win the putting competition?
Declan wants to know if Drake won the putting contest. No. He was close. Dave?
Did you lose any golfers due to having to postpone it?
It's a great question. Yeah, so he asked if we lost any golfers due to postponing my event, and the answer is yes, but we also gained golfers as well because the new date allowed people that couldn't make it the date before to make it, and then there were some dropouts, but it overall pretty much canceled out, and we had just under 100 golfers, so I was thrilled.
I don't know much about this world and how it works in like a golf tournament. So you make money from contributions that come in, and then do the golfers themselves pay like a registration fee or something, and that adds to your pot of your $28,000?
Yeah.
That's sort of how it works.
Mm-hmm. So he asked how all the money comes filling in, if it's just from sponsors or if the players have to pay a fee as well. Yeah, so we worked together on pricing, how everything worked, and there were multiple different sponsorship opportunities for a certain amount all the way to an extended amount. And players also had a certain price per player, and then a lot of companies that were interested in playing and supporting the event would buy a foursome. So they'd pay for each golfer, and that's how it all came together. And Huntington Valley gave me a certain outing package that it was a minimum, and that's what you had to pay. And so we got to that number, and then from the help of a majority of people, it was just amazing. And together we came together, and we're blessed enough to raise that much, so I was thrilled.
Thank you, Connor. I really enjoyed the course of that speech. This concludes our night. Thank you to everyone for attending, and we'd love to invite and see all of you at our next two presentation nights at 7 p.m. on Thursday and at 7 p.m. next Tuesday. Have a wonderful evening.